Hey yo everybody, today I'm going to be teaching you guys how to do lighting. Now I'm not a professional, so take everything I take with a grain of salt, but this is just how I learned. Let's get right into it. The overlays I use will flash on screen, but there are plenty other overlays that you can use, and you can always adjust these for the hue or saturation that you need for your specific video. Remember everybody, the color and the hue of your overlay will greatly affect the mood of your video. For example, think about Inside Out. Sadness is blue because it's associated with sad, or anger is red because it's associated with being mad. But it's not just the color that changes how it looks. The saturation and lightness can also really affect it. Like if you turn down the saturation and lightness on Joy and change the color of her dress and the hue, it makes her look like a whole another character. One way to go about this would be to duplicate the layer and then change the hue and effects. If you wanted a more sad, dull vibe, you would probably change the hue shift to blue due to association of blue and sad. But if you wanted a happier, playful vibe, you would probably change the effect to a more yellowy tone to associate the yellow and happy. Another way to go about this would be to go into color and fill in the corner of your screen and changing the color, then changing the blending mode depending on what color you change it to. For example, if I was going to use blue or a sadder tone, I would use multiply, but if I wanted a happier tone and I used something like yellow, I would probably use overlay just to set the tone a little more happy. But enough on colors. If you want more information on this, you can check tutorials in the description. Now, time for the actual thing. Here's how I would put this into practice. First, I play around with hue shift to try to get the vibe of the thing. I wanted this to be a more nostalgic kind of 2000s vibe, so that's what I did for this. I also used the effects to make the reflection be shown off the ground and the sky. This kind of helps set it a more realistic vibe. Once I'm done with this, I change the colors and I eyedrop it to match the background. This really helps make your characters feel like they're actually inside the scene and not just random floating characters that aren't supposed to be there. Then I use multiply and I turn down the opacity. You can use other ones depending on what color you used, like I described earlier. Then I click a clipping mask and I adjust it a little bit so that it looks like there's a light on the character. This you don't have to do for every scene, but just in this specific video, that's how the light's shown on the character. If you want the light to be a different color than just their actual tone, then you would click solid matte and you could change the color to what you wanted the light to be. Then you would click punch out. This is unnecessary, but I think it makes it a bit more smooth. Then you'd add in all your overlays. This next step is basically just playing around with blending and opacity and hue shift, and that's pretty much it. Now, you could just do that, but if you want to play around with it a little more, you can go into photos and play with the settings, like adding highlights and shadows and hue shift as well in this. For a warmer tone with more intense lighting, it's basically the same process, but I'll show you time lapses just so you can get a better grasp on this. The overlay process is also pretty much the same, but I would recommend using warmer toned overlays because otherwise the color gets a little confusing and muddy. Now, lastly, I'm going to show you just a quick time-lapse of how I would do this in Kinemaster for people who don't have access to Alight Motion. Again, it's basically the same process, but you don't have access to as many cool features, so you kind of have to make do with what you do. Alright, that's pretty much it for this tutorial, but if you have any other questions, let me know in the comments. Goodbye my lovely teacups, and I'll see you in the next one.